Hey there, welcome to Pickled Parables. This podcast is presented by Parable Ministries as a Bible teaching resource. Thank you for joining us. Pickled Parables is a podcast about taking in and living out the Bible. Here we will study, contemplate, and testify to the Bible's incredible teachings and how it leads us to live better lives. To stay up to date with all things Parable, follow us on Instagram at parable_ministries and visit our website at parableministries.com. We hope today's message finds you well.
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Pickled Parables. I'm your host, Hunter Hoover, and I am joined this time via the internet for another one of our parable portraits by Elijah Olander. Elijah, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Hunter?
I'm doing well. I got to ask, it's a great time to ask now that I've known you for a while via the internet and have already said your name a couple times. Am I saying your last name right?
Say it again.
Olander?
Yeah, that's great.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where in my brain, it's like, this is right, but then you never know. So Elijah has been one of our teachers here on Parable. You were a part of the James series, and you've also done some separate teaching from time to time. And so this format is a way for the audience to get to know some of our teachers, but also hear testimony and kind of bear witness to the work that Jesus is doing in the lives of believers. So Elijah, I'm going to kind of open it up to you and kind of turn it over. Why don't you start by giving people just like a feeling for who you are, where do you come from, just the basic biography information. Who are you?
Yes, I am Elijah Olander, son of Scott Olander.
Perfect.
I grew up speaking of my father, I grew up in Kingman, Arizona, unfortunately. My dad himself was a youth pastor for about, almost 20 years, which is kind of a long time for a youth pastor. And in the last, I would say, 5 years of his tenure there, he was working on his master's degree, preached a sermon on a Sunday morning at our main service at the church I grew up at. And the senior pastor there was like, you're ready to take on a church yourself. So, around that same time as he was wrapping up his master's, there was a church up in Page, Arizona, really small town right on the Utah border. If you've seen pictures of a location called Horseshoe Bend, it's part of the Colorado River, where it literally looks like a Lake Powell, Antelope Canyon, some of the most photographed, geographic locations in Arizona, if not the country. That's where my dad took on a church at First Baptist Church of Page. He's now been there officially as of yesterday, 13 years as a senior pastor. Really, I've grown up in Arizona all my life. I just grew up, obviously hearing the Bible taught every Sunday, Awana and youth group and stuff like that.
That Awana, dude, that's awesome. That's cool.
I still sing the songs to my wife every now and then. And as far as, let's see, where are we at right now? Yeah, so in high school, I think I looked the part of a Christian. I was a pastor's kid and I went to church every Sunday. I wasn't getting into drugs and alcohol and sleeping around like a lot of my peers were. That didn't necessarily mean I was redeemed. I think, I had a lot of closeted sin, a lot of self-righteousness, a lot of arrogance and just thinking because I was doing better than most kids, that meant I was a Christian. And actually, I guess kind of underlying that, I think because of that, I had an interest in full-time ministry. Like I wanted other people to be good like I'm good. And it wasn't really actually until I graduated high school that I started just like, so I worked at a car wash, or I worked at a car rental place, and I was washing cars, and my boss let me, plug in earphones and listen to music or whatever. But that's also when I discovered like podcasts and audiobooks. And so I started listening to, one of them was, Wretched Radio. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. Todd Friel's the guy there. And then I listened to David Platt's Follow Me. And at that point I realized, am I really a Christian? Like my commitment to the Lord has just been, I just do good things, so therefore I'm a Christian, rather than, and then, you juxtapose that with the secret sins I had in my heart and in my mind that weren't as outward. And it just made me realize that the cost of Christianity is so much deeper than just mere, just do good because you're a Christian.
Yeah.
And so I think actually that opened up a huge avenue to just studying God's word more, studying theology. And so as far as whether I got genuinely saved, I don't know. Maybe I was saved when I was 7 and I just struggled with a lot of legalism. But if anything, at the very least, it was just like an explosion of just growth and sanctification.
Yeah.
And so, after that, I decided, I want to go to Bible college. I didn't have enough money to go to university. So there's this Bible college up in Oregon, Ecola Bible College. I don't know if you're from Oregon, so I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have. Yeah. Yeah.
So, it was just a good place. It was cheap. It wasn't accredited, but it was just a good place to kind of get away from my environment, study the Bible week in and week out, and fellowship with other younger believers and serve and stuff like that. And that was huge. And yeah, so at that point, my mom, I'm giving you a lot.
No, you're good. This is perfect.
Sweet. My mom kind of during that same time started getting into her own business while my dad was still, full-time pastor, and it just took off. And so at that point it was university is actual college is a legitimate possibility. And so I applied to Arizona Christian. I got some academic scholarship. I got some soccer scholarship, and then just help from my parents. And so, then I went to Arizona Christian University. I met Michael Rogers there. He ended up being a groomsman at my wedding, and I was his best man at his.
That's awesome.
And we're still off. It's great friends. We hang out. I was just down in Phoenix for his birthday in June.
Yeah.
And so there's some of that. Got my biblical studies degree just like Michael did. And then, that's also where I met my now wife, Gabriela, Gabby for short. And I'm almost done.
No, you're good. I'm just taking it all in, and I will have follow-up questions. I'm taking notes too, so
great.
You're good.
Okay,
you're
cool.
good.
I didn't know I was going to get into all this. It's kind of like that Michael Scott quote. I just start a sentence and see where it's going to take me along the way.
Hey, that's perfect.
Yeah, so I met my wife at ACU, and she just so happened to be second cousins with a pastor up here in Prescott, Arizona, a Canyon Bible Church of Prescott. And I was finishing up my degree, and I gave him a call and said, are you aware of any youth pastor positions or anything like that for a young guy straight out of a Bible college? And he said, well, no, but I just signed an agreement with Phoenix Seminary, and I'm going to be teaching some classes in person. So you should come up, take those in person, and then do the rest of your classes online. And
wow,
you get to live in Prescott. So as soon as we got job offers at various places in town, and we found an apartment to get into, we first got married in May of 21, my wife and I. And then 2 weeks after just after our honeymoon, we packed up everything and into Prescott. And so I did the seminary thing here. I've been a member of Canyon Bible Church. And then as soon as I finished seminary in July of 23, Pastor Andrew offered me to be his assistant. So I've been doing that ever since.
Awesome. That's super cool.
So I think that's just about sums it up.
Yeah. I do have I'll go back and I'm just going to kind of walk my way through. Do you have any siblings? Just curious.
Yes. I have 2.
Okay. Where do you fall in that?
I'm a middle child.
Here you go. Yeah. My wife is a middle child, so.
I'll be praying for her.
Yeah, it's been fun because I'm an only kid. I had so many cousins that it didn't feel like it, but it's been fascinating to watch, because my wife has 6 siblings, and it's all right, and you are smack dab in the middle, aren't you here? Yeah. So that's cool. And then you made a comment about this believing at 7, but then not really that faith was either solidified or it was made real or what, there's a lot of language around that. And this is something that, especially with folks who have that as part of their testimony where they were saved young or they came to Christ young. And something that I've begun asking about is, as you look back, do you find, and you kind of made comment about the peers you had in high school, but do you find that God spared you from I mean, whether it's trouble or grief or whatever it was due to that early salvation, whether it was like if you're saved, you're fully saved, but do you think like what's your reflection on that, like looking back?
Yeah, I think, well, as you're kind of asking that, I'm thinking maybe I just was saved and I just needed to grow up a lot until, I was out of high school, rather than not knowing whether or not I was genuinely saved. Yeah, I mean, I was also like discipled really well by my parents.
Yeah.
There's that stereotype of PKs just going off being crazy. They go to college and they come back with shaved head and tattoos. But yeah, I think my parents had a good balance of, my dad had just a very strong sense of right and wrong, a lot of integrity, and so I think he instilled that, and then my mom was really good at, when you do fail, when you don't have that integrity that your dad has or whatever, Jesus died on the cross for your sins. There's grace. He loves you, and he disciplines those he loves.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those were, I mean, when I do think of like the fact that I didn't go way off the deep end was just looking at my parents' example. I mean, they were also really, really good about, like, they've had troubled pasts, and so they get it. Whenever I would make mistakes, they weren't like shocked. It's not anything that they hadn't ever been through. And I guess, learning from their mistakes was also like super helpful. And it was like good warning signs. Like if I do the same thing, here's the consequences you could deal with.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That makes sense. And then about Ecola, how long were you there? Because I have a follow up with that, but I'm curious.
Totally. So I went from the year 2017 to 18. I just did the first year.
So okay, so I attended a like Valley Christians retreat, like where they have all these pastors come out. Do you remember anything like that happening while you were there? Because it would have been 2017, 2018 that I attended that.
I remember, the only thing I distinctly remember, there's a Bible college from Ventura, California.
Okay.
That come up, but there were conferences like almost every other week.
Yeah. And, yes. Yeah. And this one, I was just curious because like that is the exact like date range that I would have been. That's actually the only reason I knew of it was because they always said like, yeah, we have this Bible college and a lot of the kids are training for ministry. And so they're also like, they take jobs on our like facilities here. And I was like, oh, this is cool. So yeah. And then how long did you play soccer for?
So I grew up playing. So I think I started at like 5 or 6 years old. And then I played through high school.
Whew.
So yeah. I was no Messi or Maradona. That's for sure.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think funny enough, like when I was applying to ACU, I'd been out of, so I took a year of community college and then I went to Ecola. So I'd been like 2 years out playing. But when I was like talking to the ACU's coach about soccer, I explained to him I was a biblical studies major. I'd love to be like a Bible study leader kind of guy. And I'm like 99.9% sure that is the sole reason I got any sort of scholarship at all. It had nothing to do with ability or skill, but
hey, that's awesome though.
I was the only good kid on the team because all the rest of the guys were partiers and even at a Christian college. Yeah.
Man, oh yeah. I went to Corbin, so no need to explain. I totally get it. Soccer is one of those sports that, like, I grew up in Montana, and for whatever reason, I feel like soccer didn't exist. I know it did, but, like, my school didn't have soccer, and then it wasn't until I got to Corbin, I met guys that played soccer, and I was like, dude, you guys just run for, like, 2 hours. And so, hats off to you. That's awesome. So, kind of jumping back, and you can kind of speak toward that 7-year-old salvation experience or that later, like, sanctifying experience or both. What were like the circumstances? Was there anything like specific, whether it was like a teaching or maybe it was just like specific guidance from your parents that brought you to that saving faith in Jesus?
Yeah, I think, funny enough, like as a youth pastor's kid, we get to go on to camp with Dad, which was awesome. Some of my best memories are are doing that. And so I think, I was just talking about this with our youth group just got back from camp, and I was talking with one of the staff guys, and there's just something unique about the preaching there. I mean, it's a lot more evangelistic, and they really strike at the heartstrings a little bit more at even same thing with like conferences. Like you go to like a shepherd's conference down in Los Angeles, and the same guys that preach on a Sunday morning preach different at a conference. And then the same youth leaders that preach, at youth group are going to preach differently than at camp. So anyway, I feel like that was too much, but I think just a lot of those, like every year, hearing a lot of evangelistic messages, and then just being able to go to my parents with random questions about life, about the Bible, about salvation, and just being able to get biblical answers. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I don't think there was there's just one time that I was struggling with this, and my parents preached the gospel to me, and I knew at that very moment that I put my faith in Jesus. I think it was just like the repetition of hearing the gospel Sunday mornings, Thursday nights, and then random conversations with my parents.
Right.
And then I went to a private Christian school, small, till 8th grade. So I think, just getting inundated with Bible really shaped a lot of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's C.S. Lewis. It'll get fact checked eventually. Somebody will hear it and be like, oh, nope. But I think it's C.S. Lewis that talks about like he and Tolkien's relationship, and how Tolkien was kind of the one that would bring up Christ, and he knew the stories, had heard these things, and then he just talks like one day he left this town and was on his way to the other town, and when he arrived at the other town, he believed in Jesus. He doesn't he can't pinpoint the exact moment. And I find that idea somewhat convincing. I think I don't know if it's American Christianity or what specifically, that we want the conversion story where it's I have the date in my Bible that it happened, and some people have that, and that's not a bad thing. But I think especially as I do more of these conversations, it's more normal that people are like, yeah, I was saved. I came to this realization that I had believed this. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just an interesting thing that I'm finding as I do more of these. Yeah,
I think it's part of there's so many people that grow up in the church, especially in the West, in the United States. And so, you can't always pinpoint it. And really, it's not about looking at, I think there can be some people who are like, man, I grew up in church. I knew everything. I knew the Bible left and right. But, there was this moment where there was this preacher preached this message, and my life just looked different. That's kind of the mark, is do I love the things that God loves, and do I hate the things that God hates now? Is there a difference,
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. That's a good point. And then you mentioned that your dad was at a Baptist church. Was that that Baptist upbringing? Was that primarily your family's upbringing, or was that just kind of the non-denominational where it landed, for lack of a better way of asking that? What was your denominational upbringing?
Yeah, so both the churches my dad has pastored at are Baptist churches. Funny enough, they're not like SBC, they're Conservative Baptist Association churches, which is a really random small Southwest
yeah
Baptist. But my dad's not man, it's Baptist or nothing. He's pretty he plays nice with others, I guess, is a good way to put it. Yeah, we didn't go to certain Baptist conferences or camps or anything like that. If we did youth events with other churches, it wasn't just the Baptist churches. We would do it with pretty much any other church in town. So yeah, and even now, my dad's thinking about leaving this association and just becoming an independent Bible church.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the theology of baptism is there, but yeah, as far as there's not 1689 London Baptist Convention is not on the website,
right?
Or
right.
But I think it's a great document, and I would recommend it to a lot of people.
Yeah. I was just curious because that's one of those things that you truly you never know. And we do get a lot of folks that are non-denominational, which I always joke is just Baptist without the courage to say it.
Amen.
But yeah, so I was curious because, and I do think it's funny that you drew the distinction between Southern Baptist Convention and I can't remember what you called it. Can you remind me what that was called?
Yeah, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it's the Conservative Baptist Association.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I do think that's funny that you drew that distinction because I think the SBC, like, they carry a specific flavor sometimes. And so, yeah, the playing nice with others, I think, was a good highlight of how that could be different sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. Very cool. And then also related to, do you have, and we began asking this, Jesse was actually one that was like, we might want to toss this out to people. You never know. Do you have like a story of church hurt? Or some people, it's a story of church healing where it's like, hey, I was in a tough spot and church was what bailed me out of this.
Yeah. I think positively, like growing up in the church and as a pastor's kid, like I think God he took care of me in that sense of just keeping me from going off the deep end. I never felt that stereotypical pressure to be, the poster child at the church or whatever. And if I had any like sort of church hurt, it wasn't anything major. Well, I'll get into a couple of minor infractions and then a rather harder one. But one was just like on tattoos. Like I got my first tattoo when I was at Ecola, my first time out of the house. So I thought it'd be the cool thing to do. And then I just remember like, I think that following summer, walk into the lobby and an older guy grabs me by the arm and he goes, what's this on your arm? And he goes, or what'd you do to your arm? And I said, I drew on it. And he goes, you're not supposed to do that. And I mean, I at the moment thought I was just joking with me, but I talked to my dad about it. He's like, yeah, that guy's a bully. He was trying to talk down on you. Yeah. And there's another person at our church who we were talking about. I was talking about tattoos with her kids who are about my age and came up and said, tattoos, I hate tattoos. And it was just, okay, cool. So, I mean, like nothing like.
I don't remember asking, no.
Right. But just like those kinds of things where it's like, just it didn't need to be said. And maybe understand the new covenant a little bit better.
Yeah. It's tattoos can be, I find that because they are displayed oftentimes, people tend to like to formulate opinions about them quicker.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, so my wife, she got a tattoo on her arm, and even like, I'd been working at the church for 4 or 5 years at the time. And even like her getting it, she's, weighing like, oh, and there are people that are upset by it. And it's like, well, sorry.
Yeah.
Good thing Jesus saves me and you don't, I guess, is kind of where I end up with it.
That's a great way to put it. Well, by the way, it's a Bible verse. It's literally Philippians 1:21. Like,
yeah. So
the word in your heart or on your skin? No.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, this is also, I'm seeing, cause we've chatted here and there, but for some of our like teachers, this is the format that I kind of get to know them a little bit. And I can see why you and Michael are buds. Because that is such a Michael, like I can hear Michael Rogers saying that.
Except for he would never get a tattoo.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's
unless I put one on him while he was sleeping or something.
Hey. That could be. No, never mind. I was gonna say we could start doing like, see if we could talk parable partners into getting like. No, that'd be. I think we might have strayed on that one if we started even looking into that.
Oh, wait, if we get 1 million subscribers, I'll get the fish logo tattooed on me somewhere.
Oh, dude. I'm gonna talk to Jesse. Say, hey. And just like start signing Michael up for stuff that he didn't even know. Like, yeah, I think Michael might be on board. It's one of those things where if so many people are in on it, except for that probably wouldn't work with Michael. He's pretty determined to. I've tried to convince him to switch to iPhone for the last 6 years, mostly because I'm just triggered by his little green dots every time Jesse and he and I are trying to talk about something. And most recently we were on a call and his phone overheated. Now, granted, he is in Arizona and it was like 100 degrees at 9:00 at night.
Yeah.
But I'm like, Michael, my phone is not overheated. I'm doing just fine out here. And he had nothing to do with it. So also related to church life, both like in your role, like as staff in a church now, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face, I guess, in doing that ministry?
Yeah. So my position's awesome in that there's not like a whole lot of like shepherding responsibility. I mean, I have like a few guys that I disciple, and I was leading a small group. So there's that, but I think it's just remembering, like, even like, I don't want to say menial tasks, because in light of eternity, nothing's menial, but, just, I guess, remembering stuff like that. Like if it's answering emails, if it's working on projects that, or just being an assistant and not necessarily taking the horns on a particular class or other ministry or whatever, like remembering that those things do contribute to the kingdom, and that just, I guess basically daily having to remind myself, like, none of it's wasted. All of it is meaningful,
right?
And don't get caught up in thinking you're too big or too important for this kind of stuff. Even though I have the master's degree, and I've been doing this for years now and stuff like that. But I think also just like, with that, having like a contented spirit, because sometimes things like that can be overwhelming, and there have been challenges to the things I've been tasked with doing. And, there have been people who have, caused trouble in the church, and it's not just the pastors that have to deal with it.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's just really, I guess, to sum it up, like when there are multiple different challenges hitting at once, being able to just trust in the Lord with just that this isn't happening outside of his control. He's not surprised by any of it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so, that's so true. I think I know it's not just ministry, but I think anytime you work with people in any capacity, whether it's in ministry or whatever that is, it's like the whole idea of like, this is my task list to accomplish. It's like, the task list gets very messy because it gets split, and then the emergency is entered in. And so I think that's a good reminder to, lean on Christ and find peace in the middle of that. Like, well, this person's sick, or this person's yard is completely overgrown, and what are we doing Saturday? It's good to remind ourselves of like, that's part of the role of the church, but also that, Christ is sufficient in that.
Yeah.
So as far as, and this is like moving into kind of your personal walk as a believer, what are some of the lessons, like it could be from the past, like big lessons that stand out in your brain that God has taught you, or it can be like current things that God is teaching you, and often that's like the things that we're just interested in learning. Do you have anything that stands out?
Yeah. So one thing, like, it's kind of been this last, I don't know, year or so. I mean, speaking of like a interrupted, when the task list gets interrupted by a kind of a major issue, is just like, I got to sit in on like a counseling session with some of the pastors and a couple, and this couple was struggling with how they were counseling another member of the church, someone who actually ended up having to get disciplined out. Really, their mode of counseling was just like, do all these things, read your Bible more, go to church more. It was a lot of action items, and that's going to sanctify you, which in and of itself isn't necessarily wrong. But the theme that the pastors were trying to kind of teach to kind of fix the way of the errors in that was just, if this person's not redeemed, or if this person doesn't want to do any of those things,
right,
they're never going to in the first place. And so like, basically, something that's been really standing out to me is just checking like motivation behind everything. And not to the point of being like overthinking everything, but just like, why am I doing this?
Right.
Am I doing this really for God's glory, or am I doing this to be liked, to make friends, to be appreciated, to get accolades? And then and then just like daily Christian growth. Like, am I wanting to grow because I have a love for God, because God
Yeah.
loves me and has given himself up for me, and has given me an inheritance to look forward to? Or am I just doing this because the Bible says so and I have to do it?
Or sometimes the Bible didn't say so, and somebody told me the Bible said so, and we're checking that box. Yeah, no, that's a good reminder.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think like a passage that comes to mind is 2 Corinthians 3:18, paraphrasing it a little bit, but we all with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being changed from one or transformed from one degree of glory to another. This comes from the Lord who is the Spirit. And so that phrase when we behold the glory of the Lord, we're being transformed.
Yeah.
It's not by just gritting our teeth and doing better and looking at the 10 commandments and just going, oh, I need to do each of these 10 commandments better. But simply taking like a step back, God is awesome. God is amazing. He's beautiful. In and of himself, he's amazing to look at. His character is perfect. But not only that, he has done so many amazing things. He's created the universe. And then, despite us being fallen, he sent himself down to be our salvation, to reconcile us back to himself.
Right. Yeah.
And so, just, and then that just goes into the daily preaching of the gospel to the self is just, and then finding the different avenues in which you need to do that, whether it's, I need to forgive. Okay. So I go back to Matthew 18, or Ephesians, I think 5, forgive as Christ has forgiven you, stuff like that. So, yeah, I feel like that was a lot of different things all in one, but to kind of sum it up is just like being amazed with God, making him your focal point of like desire and joy. Sin just dissipates when you do that, and anxiety dissipates when you do that. Your motivation increases, motivation to do whatever, whether it's your vocation or a parent or a spouse, whatever. You want to do those things more,
right?
Because you're looking at God and how awesome he is.
Yeah. Something you said earlier, really towards the beginning of our conversation, was this idea of, and I might get it wrong, but you said something of like, what makes me a Christian, or what makes a person a Christian? Is it that they know all this stuff, or is it that they truly care about doing the things of God and loving the things God loves? And I think like all of what you're, it's as if you have, over the course of God, in your life and directing you, like you're in the middle of that right now of like, these motivations, are they because we love the things God loves, or is it, just because we've learned like, this is something I ought to do? It's interesting always to see the through lines there. That's cool. I also really liked that you said, to me, I always view it as like this sin replacement, because I know like my experience in youth group, and I had a good, mostly positive experience in youth group, but I remember, especially in middle school, a lot of the attention where we were like avoiding sin was, we spent a lot of time thinking about the sin that we should not do, and like, hey, let's not do it, guys. And then like almost separated from that was this reminder of like, oh, and don't forget like the good things you should do. And it's like, man, I wish somebody had sandwiched those together much sooner for me, because it would have been so much easier for me to avoid many of those middle school temptations if it would have been like, hey, like when you are faced with this, that is the best, maybe sometimes the most perfect time to take on one of those spiritual practices. Fill that time so that way you, like me, getting bored as a middle schooler in the middle of nowhere in Montana, it's like, and so like now doing youth ministry, I try to encourage them. It's like, hey, don't maybe focus on what you ought to do and what you can do as the means of like God sanctifying you, and this sin becomes less appealing in time. Yeah, those are good reminders. Do you, off the top of your head, I know you shared a couple passages. Do you have like a favorite Bible verse or a favorite story of the Bible that's been significant to you in your life?
Ooh, good question. Genesis 1:1 to Revelation 22. No, I'm kidding. Man. Man, at the moment, like, no. I mean, I mentioned 2 Corinthians 3:18,
Yeah.
really, really just helpful for me in the last couple of years. I think just go ahead.
Say that, and that's okay. I actually think it's more interesting to, I think people have like a life verse, and as like I have verses, do you know what I mean? And it's like the moment where I think, oh yeah, this is the one. There's the new one that is more, and it's like God is using this one right now in a big way, and it's really hitting home. And it also seems to be popping up everywhere. Like, I think it's more captivating in it. There's people that have that, oh, this is the one verse, it's been but I think the idea that like that changes, and it can and maybe ought to change, like the one that God is drawing us to, or that is speaking out more in our life, probably maybe shouldn't be the same for our whole life. I don't think that's necessarily bad to not like pin down one. And I always like, my thing is I started asking people about stories, because I've found, especially like doing work with parable and doing more teaching and stuff, like there might not be a single verse in this bulk of story that is a call out, but man, the story of this situation in the Bible and the lessons learned or not by the people of Israel in those moments is like, okay, yeah, like this is pretty significant. I'm preaching through Ezekiel, so I preach like once every 2 or 3 months at our church, and so they get a little drop of Ezekiel throughout the year, and man, I think I bit off more than I can chew, but it's also been very good because I think I knew parts of his story, and it's one of those where it's like, oh, okay, I can't like read this and just kind of keep going when I don't like grasp something as well as I should. I've got to like dig in here, and yeah, his is living very prominently for me right now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then, so also I wanted to ask about your wife. You guys have been married 4 years?
Yes.
Yeah. 4 years. Awesome. And then kids? I know.
Yes.
Perfect. Sweet. I meant to ask this earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a 9-month-old Karis Jo Olander. She is an angel. We could not have prayed or asked for a better baby.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's super cool. Yeah, wait, when they start talking, that's when I find that it really pops off. The parenting really kicks into overdrive. It's like, what did you say? That was why I was...
Yourself, right?
Yeah, I've got 2. I've got a boy and a girl, Silas and Sarah, and they're both at grandma and grandpa's right now because my son is almost 9 and my daughter is almost 7. And so it's like, they are loud, which I have no complaints. It's one of those things where I won't get into the details, but many things have happened in our church very recently that I'm like, you know what? You're sweaty and you smell weird and you're loud and you've spilled something. Not sure what that is, but man, I would take this over many of the alternatives.
Yeah.
And so just trying to count blessings in what is kind of chaos sometimes, but that's why I was kind of like, let me check and see if, because especially in the morning, they're like, can we get breakfast? Can we go outside? It's like, yes, just, and so getting it set up and having like some uninterrupted conversation is difficult, but I wouldn't trade it for sure. But that's awesome. Cool. Congrats. And man, yeah, 9 months is, enjoy it because they grow up quick. I know. It flies by.
Even though I felt crazy. Knowing that she's going to be a year old in just a few months is ridiculous.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome though. And then, so kind of moving towards kind of close, where do you, and it could sometimes I've found is people are like, I don't know, I think I am where God is taking me right now. But do you feel, whether it's a passion you have or something that's coming down the line, do you feel or see God leading you into something new or something different where you're at?
Yeah. So part of my role is like, my pastor likened it to like a residency. So I finished school. I was done with Phoenix Seminary in 23. and started this job. And it was kind of like, now that you've got like the book knowledge, the head knowledge, like here's where you're going to get your practical reps, you know? So while I'm doing actual work, I'm also doing a lot of opportunities to like preach at like our youth group and our college group. And I've preached at a couple other smaller churches on a Sunday morning. So getting a lot of that experience, getting discipleship experience, even some like admin experience too. So this is all kind of gearing me up for like pastoral ministry, hopefully soon. I've been at this job for just over 2 years now. And the idea is like, this is the year to start kind of looking and making connections and hopefully get into some sort of ministry. I do really enjoy both youth and college ministry. You know, they're such formative years of your life, especially when you're in college ministry is when you start making your faith your own, you know? You don't ride on the coattails of your parents anymore. And and especially with the way the world's going, you know, there's just so many, you're inundated with so many ideologies.
Right.
And, you know, in a sense, like, I don't want to sound arrogant in saying this. I just want to be like a stopgap to a lot of that. Like, even if it's at a, you know, a small level, if it's with 30 college students, you know, every week or 30 high school students every week, like, I want to make sure that I want to play a role in keeping kids from, you know, buying into the things of the world and to enjoy God, enjoy Christ. And then, and equip them to then disciple their friends and their classmates, stuff like that. Yeah. So, that's kind of where my passion lies. I'm open to wherever the Lord leads. He'll put me where he wants me. Yeah. But I'm just hoping that it's in that kind of sphere or those spheres.
Yeah, that's super cool. And that'll be exciting. I think it's very good and maybe something that Bible schools can learn from is the need for that practicum. Like Corbin has a practicum, but it's very like, did you get your volunteer hours? And it can be as simple as, like I helped in the church office, which isn't a bad thing, but like there is something different of like, well, no, we're going to go visit or we're going to go take some teens and, you know, do something that is difficult and longer and challenging with a group of people. And like you said, it's a job, and getting that practical chops, if you will, is I think very important. That's very much, I think, part of equipping as much as getting all the head knowledge. So I think that's cool. I'm excited for you. I can't wait to hear about whatever that is in the coming months or year or so. That'll be good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So kind of last thing is we ask folks if you, whether it's spiritual advice or what would you tell whoever's listening, like if you like, this is advice that I would give you as a believer, whether like I said, whether it's a practice or spiritual advice, what would you give to someone if they were looking for support or next steps or whatever that is?
Yeah, I think, you know, especially if they're younger listeners to this, get as plugged in as you can to the local church. Really appreciate the rudimentary teaching of the word and any sort of avenue for discipleship that you can. Don't just wait for the next camp or conference, you know, the bigger, flashier moments of Christianity. Like get plugged in and get poured into as much as you can. But you also get out what you put into it. So be a member, be a member of a church. I'm speaking in like Romans 12 language and 1 Corinthians 11, like, be a toe in the church. The church needs heels and elbows. God is glorified and his message goes out primarily through the local church. So just be about it. And even if it means setting up and tearing down chairs for Awana or whatever, taking out the trash, some janitorial work around the church, the gospel goes forward because of people like that. I've seen it firsthand. And that's what I try to encourage like guys in our college ministry and stuff like that is like, when you help me with these kind of menial tasks, these mundane tasks, like this means the pastors don't have to do it. And that means that they can continue, you know, shepherding people and preaching, and they have more time to devote themselves to that work. Right. Yeah. So local church it up.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's really good advice. I think, especially for young people, you know, I find our audience, at Parable is that college age, whether it's we always say 18 to 30. But I do know that we have some high school aged listeners. We can always see our demographic stuff that flies through.
Oh, that's cool.
And I think it's very important, especially like in an internet age where it's very easy to, quote, stay connected via the internet. And here we are, connecting on the internet. We have an excuse. It's called distance. No, but, and I think of that scripture. It says like, don't forsake the gathering. Don't quit meeting together, especially coming out of COVID. And I feel like for a couple years we're still feeling the COVID, and now I've moved myself into this place. It's like I'm done actually blaming anything on it. Like if you don't want to gather, I think it is you, and we're all safe. And if you're not, totally like sit in the back, but like you said, be about it. You don't have to be around too many people to help fold bulletins. So that's what I've learned. So yeah, I think that's excellent advice.
I think it applies to adults too. Even if you're in your 50s, like I noticed that at our church, the people who maybe move on to another one, that and their reason is we just didn't feel connected. I would think about that group or those people and go, where did they serve in the church? And it was like, I don't know if they were serving anywhere at all. And then it's like, well, of course you don't feel connected. You're not, right. To use Philippians 1:27, you're not striving side by side for the faith of the gospel. You're not even in the stands. Like you're in the parking lot.
Well, I want to preface this by saying I obviously think the gospel should be free, and I believe that church should be free.
Yeah.
That said, there is, and I've talked to Jesse a bit about this, there is this like gym membership reality where folks who pay to go to a gym are more likely to go to the gym because they have a personal, in their case, financial stock that every month is, yep, I better go because I am invested in this. While I don't think it's the same, I think there's a similar psychology of like, no, like I folded bulletins for an hour. I helped the custodian shampoo carpets for 2 hours Saturday. I want to see like folks come in and whatever that is, there's getting involved, like attaches yourself to that community in a way that, we can make church programs until we're all blue in the face, but it will only connect people to the church as much as we continue to try to like, grab at what they want, where when it's, like you said, plugged in and serving and being a part of that community, you've attached yourself. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do this with them. It's like, no, we are going to do this thing. I think that's like you said in Philippians, that's the big, like striving together for the gospel. It's key. That's super good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Elijah, thank you so much for hopping on here in the morning and letting me grill you and sharing your story and the work that Jesus has done in your life. It's awesome to hear.
The Lord's been so good to me. I'm happy to kind of share a little bit, and hopefully, it'll be an encouragement to people listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, I'm going to end the show and I'll hit stop here and if we can chat a little bit here at the end too, but listener, thank you so much for being here. We will catch you next time. Love y'all. Bye now.
God bless.
Thank you for listening to Pickled Parables. If you enjoyed this message, please rate us, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you're interested in more things like this, check out our secondary podcast called My Dusty Bible. To stay up to date with all things Parable, follow us on Instagram at parable_ministries and visit our website at parableministries.com. Parable is a volunteer organization, and we would deeply appreciate your prayers. Thank you for joining us today. We'll catch you later.